Welcome back to the channel. I hope you enjoy. I used to work in a paper factory. There were dark places where no one went. Part 3. I couldn't see the head, and I was glad about that. I think if I had been able to, I would have screamed regardless of the danger. The clawed foot approached my hiding place. It paused in front of the chair, causing my mind to go into convulsions of fear. Somehow, I had the presence of mind to hold my breath. As I breathed in silently, the horrid stench of death assaulted my senses. It stood there for an eternity. I knew I was dead. Even worse, I felt this thing, this abomination, had the ability to rip apart my soul as well as my body. Imagination gripped me and told me all sorts of atrocities that were about to happen to me. The creature's breath chugged like a steam engine, filling the room with mist. Without warning, it stepped away from my hiding place. I felt the footsteps recede in the mist as well. From the direction of the footsteps, there was a sudden scream. It pierced the air like an arrow and penetrated my ears. I nearly leapt from my hiding place. My nerves were shot. I was stressed out, trying to decide if I should stay or leave. My mind outlined the pros and cons while I slowly moved the chair from in front of me and extricated myself from my impromptu sanctuary. I slipped out of the doorway the creature had entered and looked up and down the hallway. The doors all looked identical, and I forgot which way I had come in. I mentally flipped a coin and turned right. I crept up to the open doorway and peeked in. Another corpse dressed in a business suit sat behind a desk. I slipped past the next door and found the same thing. All 5 doors down the hallway held the same scene. When I reached the end and turned the corner, then there was another identical hallway. My fear and irritation battled for which was stronger. As I decided, one of the corpses came out of an office and nearly ran into me. We looked at each other in horror and both screamed at the same time. I ran down the previous hallway as more corpses appeared, looking around to see what was happening. As I ran past, they tried to grab me, causing me to dodge left and right to stay out of their grasp, like some insane game of tag. I reached the end and found another identical hallway. Panic clawed at my mind as I dodged more corpses, eventually finding the door I had come in. As I ran toward it, the monstrous demon turned the far corner. It opened its maw and shrieked the most horrible sound I've ever heard. Then it flung itself at me, its leathery wings slicing through the air. The corpses flooded into the hallway at the call of their master, throwing themselves at me with reckless abandon. I flung myself down the stairs, trying not to fall as I took them 2 at a time. The corpses didn't use such caution. They tumbled over each other, creating a macabre waterfall of decaying flesh. I hit the ground running, finally on familiar turf. I shot past the break room toward the newer part of the factory floor. The skeletons must have heard the call as well. The first few abandoned their machines as soon as they saw me. They tried to block the hallway, but I cut through the back door to the men's restroom and out the front. They quickly reversed their course, joined by 2 others in pursuit. I ran into the open area of the docking bay and was able to dodge the skeletons that were now joined by the corpses. I ran back to the old section where I knew every inch, every dark corner, every hiding place. I searched for the portal near the stacks of paper rolls where I had arrived in this familiar hell, but it was nowhere to be found. I circled the area to keep my pursuers at bay as I searched. My pursuers realized my tactic and began trying to outflank me. In the middle of avoiding a group of corpses and skeletons, the demon hovered down in front of me. I slid to a stop as its massive fists smashed the concrete floor in front of me, shattering it and sending dust flying into the air. The red light gave the dust a glow that made the place seem even more hellish. As evil as the red cloud looked, I used it to lose myself in the confusion. I dove and crawled and slid around every creature I could make out. Some slashed at me with rotting nails or bare bones, but I kept moving. The confusion was so great that the ones who knew where I was would topple over tangled up with those who didn't. I was able to crawl out of the throng and make my way to an exit door. I tried it, to no avail. It wasn't just locked, it was solid. There was no give in the door at all, like someone had built a brick wall behind it. I tried door after door that should have led outside, but they were all the same, solid and unyielding. As I searched for a way out, the red cloud drifted toward me. They must have figured out I hadn't given them the slip and were back in pursuit. I tried to think of the one place they wouldn't look for me until I could plan some other way out of here. I ran to the elevator and pressed the button. Nothing happened. I ran into the break room and desperately searched for something to pry the doors open with. I found a metal butter knife and shoved it in between the doors, opening them just enough to get my fingers in. I pulled with all my might. Straining as the doors crept slowly open, I saw the first of my pursuers. I squeezed myself into the elevator car as the doors slammed shut. I collapsed to the floor and sat still. I tried to slow my breathing as quickly as I could. I pulled the flashlight out of my pocket but didn't turn it on. I didn't want to risk even a sliver of light being seen from the outside. I focused on breathing deep, slow, and silent. The air was close in the elevator, but at least there was no damn red glow, only darkness. Suddenly I felt panic rising in me, realizing I hadn't looked inside the elevator before diving in. I held a quick debate in which panic won over caution. I covered the flashlight with my hand, creating the eerie red glow I had come to hate. I quickly panned around and found nothing. I doused the light as I heard the dead and decaying lumber. By like it was a shift change. After the crowd was gone, I heard the heavy footsteps that could only be the demon leader. They too passed the elevator and then they paused. I held my breath, not knowing if it would be my last, unsure if that monster would punch right through the doors and drag me to my doom. The silence was thick enough to cut with a chainsaw. I didn't dare move. That thing was waiting, listening, and then the doors exploded inward. They just missed me as they embedded themselves in the back wall of the elevator. The demon glared down at me. I was dead. By some miracle, instead of cowering and accepting my fate, I jumped up and climbed out on top of the elevator, aided by stepping on the doors that were embedded in the wall. It didn't seem to expect that. Its claws slashed the air just beneath my foot as I clambered out of the and shone my flashlight up the shaft. It was dark, but the top seemed to be extra dark. My flashlight couldn't penetrate it. I nearly jumped for joy. I had found the portal. I only prayed it would stay there until I could get to it. If I could get to it. I began climbing the access ladder with every ounce of quickness and agility in me. Below me, the monster was tearing the roof of the elevator to shreds, trying to get to me. It became a bizarre foot race as I climbed with all possible speed. My foe, however, was cheating. He flapped his wings twice and shot upward toward me. I was frantic and despondent, knowing it was going to catch me inches away from my salvation. Just then it roared as I saw his wings hit the metal framework inside the shaft. Hope burgeoned inside me as the monstrous struggle gave me the precious seconds I needed. I reached the top of the ladder and flung myself into the open air above the portal. For one horrible moment, I felt myself falling as I knew that I was wrong. This wasn't the portal. I was falling to my death and the feast of the beast that pursued me. I landed hard on something solid yet oddly soft. Opening my eyes, I looked at the surface that had knocked the wind out of me. I felt it with my fingers and knew it was carpet. Behind me, someone cleared their throat. I turned to see the owner of the company sitting at his desk. I struggled to my feet, feeling the adrenaline crash coming on. "Who are you and how did you get in here?" he said, looking me up and down. I took in my own appearance, forgetting about the shredded, dirty, and bloody clothes that barely clung to me. I opened my mouth to say something, then realized no matter what I said about the trauma I'd just been through, it wouldn't be believed. I wasn't sure I believed it myself. I smiled at him and said, "Just a lowly Morlock, sir." He growled softly, reminding me of a sound I'd heard recently. I turned and left his office, glancing in at well-dressed office workers as I walked through the well-lit hallways, having flashbacks to the deadly pursuit. I knew I couldn't spend one more minute in that place. I walked out the main door, grateful that it opened, and never stepped foot back inside that factory. I still have nightmares, even months later. It's only now that I've gathered up the courage to tell my tale. That's the end of this story. I hope you've enjoyed. Thanks for taking the time to listen to one of my videos. I'll catch you in the next one. Ciao.